Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, we're switching our fiqh dars to after Maghrib. The dars goes on for about half an hour to 45 minutes. Inshallah, that's kind of our goal. For the brothers who are wanting to pray sunnah and leave, you can pray inshallah in the side room, and inshallah ta'ala you're free inshallah. We don't want to hold anybody that isn't planning or doesn't have the time to be here. And so inshallah with that we'll start the dars. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna 'ilman innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma ameen wa ba'd. We continue with Safinatun Najat by Sheikh Salim ibn Abdullah al-Hadrami rahimahullah. This is our 15th dars, and we are a little past halfway in the text in our book. So inshallah, the rest of it should not be as long as the earlier chapters. We'll try to keep this short. We have, I believe, 10 nights left. Today is the 12th, so the Ramadan is expected to be on the 22nd. So inshallah, in these next 10 nights, we will try to conclude the book, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So here the author, rahimahullah, he's going to talk about sujood al-sahu or sajdatu al-sahu. And so it's translated as the prostration of forgetfulness. So this is the sujood you make at the end of prayer if you forget something or did something in prayer that you weren't supposed to do. Brother Karana, could you lower the volume in the side room so that anybody who wants, Sheikh Muhammad, you got it? All right, so anybody that wants to pray sunnah, you want to read Quran, the room there, the audio is muted, so you're able to sit down and pray sunnah and read Quran and do whatever you would like, inshallah ta'ala. So yeah, continuing, sujood al-sahu is a sujood you pray at the end, you make at the end of prayer. It's 2 sujoods, and you do it in 4. He says here there are 4 cases or 4 causes for doing sujood sahu. Number 1, something I want to mention before I mention the causes, is that sujood sahu is only done one time. If you make many mistakes in salah, you only make 2 sujoods. You don't do a separate, additional sujood for every mistake. Right? 2 sujood, it can be 5 mistakes or 1 mistake, you would still do what? 2 sujood. Another mas'ala that's important to mention is that there's a lot of talk about the timing of sujood sahu. Do you do it before salam or after salam? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he did both. The Prophet ﷺ, he did both. So how do we understand that? And so in the Shafi'i school, sujood sahu is always before salam. Sujood sahu is always before salam. You always do sujood sahu before salam. When do you do it after? If you forget to do it before. Does that make sense? You're reading your tashahhud and you're supposed to do sujood sahu, but you forgot, and now you're like, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And you're like, oh, I didn't do sujood sahu. You finish your salam, and then you do sujood sahu afterwards. So you do sujood sahu after prayer in the case you forget to do it before the salam. Is that clear about the timing? What do you say in sujood sahu? You can say regular tasbih. That's sufficient. Subhana rabbil a'la or subhana rabbil a'la wa bihamdih. That's sufficient. 3 times as usual. And in between the 2 sujood, you say Rabbi ghfirli warhamni. After you get up from the second sujood, assalamu alaikum. Sometimes we get into the habit of doing tashahhud at-tahiyyah because you're so used to it that when you say you do tashahhud, right? You don't have to. And if you forget, khalas, you just do salam. You don't have to do anything. Right? It's a habit, right? It's a habit. So you're like, oh, okay, I do tahiyyat, tashahhud again. You don't have to do it. Sujood, subhana rabbil a'la 3 times, sit. Rabbi ghfirli warhamni, the dua. Sujood, subhana rabbil a'la 3 times, sit. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. If you forgot to do it before, you did assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. You make sujood twice again, and then you say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Does that make sense? how you do the sujood, when you do the sujood, and what you say in the sujood. Now the question is, when do you do the sujood sahw? What are the causes? So here the author, rahimahullah, he says there are 4 causes for doing what? Sujood sahw. There are 4 causes for doing sujood sahw. Number 1, leaving out some of the sunan ab'ad, either completely or partly. And the sunan ab'ad are translated as the main sunnahs. So the sunnahs of prayer are 2 types. There are sunnah that are ab'ad, that are the main sunnahs, and there are sunnahs that are not main, but they're general. They're general sunnahs, such as saying Subhana Rabbil Azim, such as saying Subhana Rabbil A'la, such as saying Rabbana wa lakal hamd, such as reading a second surah. All of these are what? Sunnahs. If you forget it, you don't do anything for it. The only sunnah you do sujood sahw for are the main sunnahs. Does that make sense? If you didn't read a second surah, you don't make sujood for it. You forgot Subhana Rabbil A'la, you don't make sujood for it. You forgot Subhana Rabbil Azim, you don't make sujood for it. Maybe you said Subhana Rabbil A'la in ruku', and you said Subhana Rabbil Azim in sujood. You made a mistake. You don't make sujood for it. Make sense? You don't make sujood for any of these things. You simply continue. But you do make sujood if you have left one of the main sunnahs. One of the main sunnahs, you make sujood. Make sense? Inshallah. What are the main sunnahs? There are 7. On the next page, on page 67, the author, he tells us what the main sunnahs are. Right there. Same, you're just looking right there. The main sunnahs are 7. He says the recitation of the first tashahhud. So if you suppose the first tashahhud, the first at-tahiyyatu lillahi, if you don't say it, you make sujood sahw. If you forgot, you got up, you don't go back for it. You just continue your salah, you make sujood sahw. Because the first tashahhud is a main sunnah, is not a fard. The first tashahhud is a main sunnah, is not a fard. So if you miss it, continue your salah. Can you go back for it? The scholars, they say you cannot go back for it. It is haram to go back for it. Why? You don't go back for sunnahs in prayer. Does that make sense? You don't go back for sunnah in prayer. You can go back for fard, but you don't go back for sunnah. So if you forgot to do your first tashahhud, you got up, and you're like, oh, subhanAllah, no, don't go back. People, they always make the mistake. The imam, sometimes he's leading salah, and he forgot the first tashahhud. He automatically stands up. And they're like, subhanAllah, don't say anything. Just follow him. If he left the sunnah, he cannot go back for it. He can't. You can't go back. You just proceed. Make sense? So that's a mistake that people always make all the time. There's no time I missed the first tashahhud, except there's at least 2 or 3 people saying subhanallah. Right? So to tell you what, don't go back, continue following the imam. You don't say subhanallah, just proceed. Faisal? The sitting, yeah, the first at-tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu, that is called tashahhud. If you forgot to sit down for it before getting up, you just continue your salah. Make sense? But you do sujood sahw at the end of prayer. Make sense? You do sujood sahw at the end of prayer. You don't go back for it. It is haram to go back for it. But you do sujood sahw at the end of prayer. Is that clear? Make sense? So tashahhud is your at-tahiyyatu lillah, the first tahiyyat.
So like duhur,
asr.
So you do only one, that's it.
Yep. You missed it, continue. Pray number 3, pray number 4, then you do the last one, and then you do sujood sahw. Is that clear? 2 sujood after, before salam. After you finish all your du'as, 2 sujood before salam. If you forget to do before salam, you do it after salam. Yeah? Clear? Good. He said it's number 2, if you forget to sit therein. So if you sat but you didn't read tashahhud, then same mistake. You do sujood sahw. Make sense? Number 3, you forgot to recite salah upon Nabi therein. You did tashahhud but you didn't say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. You didn't say Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. You do sujood sahw. This is for the first tashahhud. Make sense? For the first tashahhud. Be mindful that in the first tashahhud, the three other schools, they don't recommend Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. The Shafi'i school recommends it. The majority, from what I know, they don't recommend Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. They just say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. They get up. Shafi'i school, they say, no, you say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, but you do not add wa ala ali Muhammad. You don't add wa ala ali Muhammad. You say the first tashahhud, you make your tashahhud, you say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Get up. Do not add wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad. How about you like, ya Shaykh, the Imam, he's making long one. What am I supposed to do? Make dua. رب اغفر لي وارحمني اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة. Anytime the Imam makes the salah long and you don't know what to do, read dua. Read dua. Is that clear? Read dua.
The first two rak'ah, you do you bear witness there's no God and
You say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad and then you get up. Make sense?
So not like ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa astagfirullah, you get up. So you have to say
The majority, they say you get up. After Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, they say just get up. The Shafi'i school, they say no, you add wa ala ali Muhammad. There's a wisdom to that as well. They say anytime the name of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned, you're supposed to send salah. That's okay. That's it. That's all you're supposed to add. You said Tahiyyatu lillah all the way to Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Get up. Don't add anything. Don't add wa ala ali Muhammad. Don't add wa ala ali Muhammad. You just say Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Allahu Akbar. Get up for standing.
so we can pick the first one.
Huh?
The first one.
What's the first one?
Like the first one we don't say, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
If that's what you learned, if that's what you taught by your teachers before, you're free to adopt that. It's no problem. That's fine. I always tell, and yesterday we spoke about madhabs. I told you guys, your job is to follow. Our job as general people is to follow what our teachers have taught us. They're the experts. Right? So we follow what our teachers have taught us. And our teacher's job is to study the schools of law that our scholars have adopted. Does that make sense? So the teachers, they adopt the madhabs, the community, they follow the teachers. That's kind of how it works. Make sense? So in our circumstance, I'm teaching you, and so you can follow according to what I teach you. But if you've learned something different before, and that is how your mashayikh taught you in the past, you can adopt that as well. That's not a problem.
So what, no, this one, what's the difference? Because Imam Shafi'i, right? He followed the Sunnah too. Hanafi follow Sunnah too. Then Hanbali. So if we see, we cannot pick any one of them to do what we wanted or not?
Can we just pick between the opinions of scholars? You can't do that, and I'll explain why. You can't do that because if you pick and choose between the opinions of schools of law, it creates, it turns the deen into, it distorts the deen. It makes the deen something that is not even concrete. It has no substance. And it could lead your salah to become invalid according to everybody. For example, I'll give an example. In the Maliki school, you can get married without two witnesses. You don't need a witness. You don't need two witnesses. But you need wali. Make sense? And in the Hanafi school, you don't need wali. But you need witness. Somebody take Hanafi, I don't need wali. Take Maliki, I don't need witness. Him and the girl go hotel, get married and go. You see? Right? Do you guys see that? Do you see the problem it creates when you just pick and choose between schools of law? It creates distortion of the deen. You're bringing something completely new. And so our scholars, they criticize that. They say you don't just pick and you don't just shop for the easy opinion. Because if you did that, then there's no substance to the deen. The deen becomes something that you just make your desire. Whatever you desire. Oh, what sheikh said this is halal? What sheikh said riba is halal? Bismillah, I take riba. What sheikh said this is this is halal? Okay, I'll take it too. What sheikh said I can get married without witness and wali? I'll take that too. Once you keep making the deen like that, what happens? The whole deen is just your desire. There's no sharia. It's just desire. Does that make sense? So you're supposed to generally follow a school of law, and then you can adopt an opinion outside of the school if there's difficult circumstances, exceptional circumstances, right? And with the guidance of a scholar, right? With the guidance of a scholar. But not just you shop and you pick the easiest one and then you say that the Prophet ﷺ, he always chooses the easiest option. You know, some people, they said the Prophet, he always chooses the easiest option. So every time I'm going to pick the easiest fatwa so that everything is, because if you did that, everything was going to become halal. Nothing is haram. Right? Because there's different scholars. I mean, they're human beings, right? And so it creates a chaos and distortion of the deen. So that is why we don't just pick from every school anytime we want. We generally follow one school, and we can get out of it when there's difficult circumstances and so on and so forth. Make sense? All right, let's continue. And then he said number two, the other ab'ad, I'm going to continue on page 67. The other ab'ad of salah, the main sunnahs of salah are, is the Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad in the second tashahhud is the main sunnah. So Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad is wajib, wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad, this is in the second tashahhud, yeah? Second tashahhud. To add wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad is a main sunnah. Does that make sense? It's a main sunnah. The other three, 5, 6, and 7 are talking about the qunut in Fajr. The qunut of Fajr, according to the Shafi'i school and Maliki school, is sunnah. Right? The Shafi'i school, Maliki school is sunnah to do qunut in Fajr. You say, Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Allahumma hadina fi man hadayt wa afina fi man afayt wa tawallana fi man tawallayt. The Shafi'i madhab, that's what they do. The Maliki school, they make their qunut before ruku'. Brother, you from West Africa? Yes. They make the qunut in where you grew up before ruku', right? So but in Fajr, both schools, they make qunut in Fajr. In Fajr, both schools, they make qunut. The Hanbali and Hanafi school, they don't do that. So in the Shafi'i, doing the qunut in Fajr is a main sunnah. It's a main sunnah. So they require, if you skip it, you say you do sujood sahu for it. Most masajid today, even in the countries that are Shafi'is, I don't see them practice the qunut of Fajr. It seems like it has become less practiced in the Muslim lands and so on. But it is completely narrated in the Sunnah. Many of the Sahaba used to do it, and it is the official opinion of the Shafi'i and Maliki school. The only difference is Maliki school, they do it before ruku'. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ, and then you make your duha. Am I right? Yeah, that's the Maliki school. Shafi'i school, they say you do it after ruku'. You go Allahu Akbar, Sami Allahu liman hamida, then you make dua. In the Shafi'i school. Does that make sense? Both are okay, both are valid, but they just have different times because of different hadiths. Does that make sense? Yes, brother.
Kent Masjid used to pray Tarawih. So after they finished, suppose we go down, then we go up, they make dua.
Yeah.
We are from Africa, we go down, but people still stand there.
Yeah, so the Hanafi school, they make witr, their qunut, they make qunut in witr, right? But their qunut is silent. The Hanafi school, the brothers from Turkey and the area around Turkey and Pakistan and India and that whole region, they follow Hanafi law. Hanafi law, it says any dua in prayer should be silent. They say qunut is dua, you make it silent. They don't make dua out loud together. The way we do in our masajid right here in our region, in our area, we say Allahumma, everybody says Ameen. For them they say dua is supposed to be silent. All dua is supposed to be silent. You see, every faqih, there's this deep understanding of Sharia. Right? So the Hanafis, they have their way. The Maliki, they have their way. The Shafi'is have their way. Make sense? That is why when you study too much opinions, you get confused.
How about Sunnah?
Huh?
Sunnah.
Sunnah of what?
Sunnah.
For which one? Qunut of the witr?
Yeah.
For subh, yeah, in the Shafi school is sunnah. So if you follow Shafi school, that's how you grow up, make your qunut. I encourage you to make it. And that's the way of the Shafi law. And there's many scholars that practice it. If you grew up in the Maliki school and you make qunut before your ruku', make your qunut. Right? It's completely fine. That's how you grew up. It's not against the sunnah. That's also in the sunnah. Is that clear?
Imam,
Yes.
how I do the qunut?
The qunut, you make short dua, any dua, you know.
But when I come to the masjid, I pray with the imam.
If you pray with the imam, you follow the imam.
I don't need to.
You don't need to do qunut. No.
No, sujood sahwi. I don't need.
You don't need to do sujood sahwi. No. You follow the imam. Wallahu alam. Make sense? You follow the imam. If he doesn't make qunut, I personally don't make qunut because this is how I found my mashayikh not making qunut. So, and also it creates a lot of confusion. People are like, what happened? What are you doing in Fajr? People don't know. What is Shaykh? Shaykh is not Ramadan. What's going on? So people, they don't have the education sometimes, and so it creates confusion. They do it in Fajr? They don't, yeah. So but if you do it, it's fine. If that's, you know what I mean? So that's the Shafi'i law, but it's not something that I found, again, people have got a lot of it. But if this is how you grew up, and this is what you're comfortable with, and this is what you know, make it, bismillah. Whenever you pray your Fajr, make it out loud, and it's fine. And again, whoever you pray behind, you respect their opinion, right? If you're in Maliki land, you pray like you pray with them, you respect. If you're Hanafi, you pray with the Hanafi. If they make silent, make your qunut silent.
Stand far away.
They don't connect feet to feet. It's okay. That's the majority opinion. They say you don't connect feet to feet. The majority, even Shafi'i school, when you stand in salah, they say feet to feet is not sunnah. Only shoulder to shoulder is sunnah. The majority of the madhahib, I think 3 or 4 or 4 or 4, they say feet to feet is not sunnah. They said that's not the understanding of the hadith. They said the hadith, it means to align your feet but to connect your shoulders. Align your feet but connect your shoulders. And then an understanding that exists today is what? When you line for salah, you connect the feet and the shoulders. The majority, they say, no, that's wrong. You only connect the shoulder, but you only align the feet.
So which school they connect the feet and shoulder?
I don't know. I think it's a very weak opinion. The majority don't agree. And it's also, it's not normal. Because usually your shoulders are wider than your feet, unless you stretch your feet out. Right? So the majority, they say even that position of like spreading your feet is very uncomfortable. And then you see brothers like spreading their feet, trying to connect with everybody. They said that's not natural. It's not a natural standing position. And that's not the understanding the scholars they took from the hadith. There's some contemporary scholars that took the opinion that you should do feet to feet and connect the feet. But it's a minority opinion, very weak opinion. The majority of our scholars, they say, you don't connect feet to feet. The Hanafis, they say you specifically, I think they say like, it should be like a hand span between your feet. So that's why for them it's like very set. There's a measurement they use, and they say you keep that measurement between your 2 feet. Don't, again, you grew up a certain way, your mashayikh taught you a certain way, follow what you've been taught. But don't act like you're the only one that knows the deen. And don't act like you're the only one that follows the sunnah. And everybody else is not following the sunnah, everybody else is ignorant. That's ignorance. To think you only know, you discovered the sunnah and the scholars for hundreds of years, they don't know the sunnah? I mean, what are you saying, right? That's the speech of someone ignorant. They're ignorant, they don't know the vastness of what our scholars have taught. And so they themselves are ignorant by assuming all the ummah is ignorant and they're on the sunnah. Right? Understand, this is your understanding of the sunnah. If you want to do that, it's fine. No problem. I encourage you, do what you think to be right. But please understand that not everybody agrees with your understanding. People have a different understanding. Majority of the ummah, they say, don't connect your feet, only your shoulder. That's it. That's the majority of the ummah, majority of the madhab. Just the shoulder. They say, connect the shoulder. That's the sunnah, align the feet. Make sense? All right, we're getting off topic, but these are important issues to also be aware of. And then so in the qunut, the Shafi'i school, they say the main sunnahs are to say, Allahumma hadina fi man hadayt, wa afina fi man afayt, wa tawallana fi man tawallayt. To the end of dua, and then you say, إنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت تباركت ربنا وتعاليت. And then you say, Allah صلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد. And then you go for sujood. That's it. It's short. It takes 1 minute to make that dua. You go for sujood. Make sense? So that's 5, 6, and 7. The recitation of dua qunut. the recitation of salah and salam upon Nabi, and the recitation of salah and salam upon his family and companions therein. Is that covered? Those are the main sunnahs of salah. If you skip any of these, they say Shafi'is tell you make sujood sahu. The first three we agree. All the madhabs agree. If you skip the tashahhud, everybody says sujood sahu. For qunut, only the Shafi'i school says sujood sahu. And also Maliki school possibly. Make sense? The qunut of fajr. The second thing you do sujood sahu for is to forgetfully in Arabic. I want to read this in Arabic. He says, فِعْلُ مَا يُبْطِلُ عَمْدُهُ وَلَا يُبْطِلُ سَهْوُهُ إِذَا فَعَلَهُ نَاسِيًا. So he says to forgetfully do an action that would nullify the salah if it was done intentionally. So you do something, if you did it on purpose, it would break your salah. If you did it on purpose, it would break your salah, but you did it on accident. Does that make sense? If you did it on purpose, it wouldn't break your salah, but you did it on accident. What is that? Such as like saying a word on accident. You forgetfully said no, for example. Just, subhanAllah, you had a thought, something came to mind, you're like, no. Or you saw your kid about to fall or something, you're like, no. You said something. If you did that on purpose, it would what? Break your salah, but you did it on accident. You do sujood sahu for it. It doesn't affect your salah. Does that make sense? So you did something. If you did it on purpose, it would break your salah. But if you do it on accident, it wouldn't break your salah. If that was to happen, you do sujood sahu for it. Make sense? On 52, he gives some examples, so you can refer to the footnote, inshallah, for further examples. Number 3, to recite a verbal rukun. So there's a verbal rukun. How many verbal rukuns are there in salah? 4. There are 4 verbal rukun. Takbirat al-ihram, Fatiha, tashahhud, the last tashahhud, and salam upon the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, and then as-salam after. So that makes it 5, right? Let's say somebody, they're making tashahhud, instead of reading at-tahiyyatu, they start reading Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. It happens sometimes. It happens, right? You're making tashahhud, and you're like already, you know, walad daalin, and you're like, subhanAllah. Right? What do? You do sujood sahu. You do sujood sahu. You read Fatiha in the wrong place. You read Fatiha in the wrong place, you do sujood sahu. That's it. Your salah is okay. Continue. Just do sujood sahu at the end of salah.
So before salam, you do sujood.
Before salam, you do sujood sahu. Make sense? Okay. Okay. So that's number 3. You move the verbal dua to a position it doesn't belong. Or you're standing and you start reading at-tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu. And you're standing. You do sujood sahu. You do sujood sahu. Does it make sense? You moved a verbal rukun to a place it doesn't belong. To a place it doesn't belong. And number 4, he says, to perform a physical rukun. A physical rukun is like ruku', sujood, something like that, with the possibility of it being an extra rukun. So you made pretty much you're not sure about the number of raka'at or ruku' or sujood that you made. You made sujood, you're like, is this my first sujood or second sujood? Right? You made a mistake. You prayed, 3rd raka'ah, you're like, is this my 3rd raka'ah, 4th raka'ah? Make sense? This happens. So you're unsure about the number of sujood or ruku' or the whole raka'ah. You're not sure about the number. What do you do in this case? What do you do in this case? You take the minimum number and you add 1 more. So you're not sure, did I make 3 raka'ah or 4? Which one are you? Which one is the minimum? 3. You take 3, add another. Make sense? You're not sure, did I do 2 or did I do 3? 2. Add another. Always take the lesser number. Always take the lesser number. In one case, some people, they have a lot of waswas. They consistently always doubt. I pray 3, 4. Dhuhr, I pray 3, 4. Maghrib, I pray 3. Every salah, they have waswas. They're confused. If you're going through that type of all consistent doubt, and it's becoming very difficult to pray salah without knowing the number, then do the thing you're most sure of. Do the one you're most sure of. But this is if the doubt is becoming excessive and you're not able to control it, then just do the one like, okay, I'm pretty sure I prayed 3. Or I'm pretty sure I prayed 4, then khalas, continue your salah. Make sense? This is only in the case if your thoughts and your doubt is becoming excessive and disruptive, then at that point, do what you're mostly sure of. Just say, A'udhu Billah, I prayed for, Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum, I'm done, khalas. Because we don't want the waswas to be debilitating. We don't want a person to become, subhanAllah, you come to salah, you stress about salah. We don't want that. The purpose of salah is not to stress you. So if you're experiencing that, inshallah, follow what you think to be most likely accurate. But if it's not like always, but sometimes when you're busy, or you're excited, when something excitement happens, or you're stressed out, or you don't sleep, it's hard to focus your mind, right? When you don't sleep, your mind is hard to gather your thoughts. You're just scattered. When you're very stressed out, you're mad, some problems, right? You're worried, something happened, some issues in life. It's hard to focus your thought because you're consumed by that problem. Or you're overly excited. You're buying a new car, you got a new job, you're about to get married, you're very excited. Your salah, your mind is all over the place. It's hard to focus in your salah, right? So in those, so sometimes it's hard. So if that happens, take the lesser number and then make sujood sahu afterwards. Make sense? Any questions about? Yeah, I saw your hand raised.
I was going to say, if you're praying and there comes a point where you start to doubt yourself, how long can you remain in that state of doubt? Like you're thinking, you've paused, or maybe let's say you're sitting down for the sitting, right? And then you start to think, did I make this amount? How long can you remain in that thinking state before it breaks your salah?
Interesting, very interesting question. The brother asked, if you're having a doubt, how long can you stay in your position for you to get your mind, figure out what you did? So you're in your first tashahhud, and you're thinking, let me think of it. Do you have an example? I want to think of an example. Let's say you're in your third rak'ah. You're in sujood of your third rak'ah, and you're like, should I get up for my fourth, or is this my fourth? How long do you stay in sujood? Does that make sense? You're thinking in sujood. You're thinking, should I get up, or should I go just sit down for tashahhud? You're not sure. So can you stay in sujood for an extended amount of time till you figure out your thoughts? Can you stay in sujood for a extended amount? You shouldn't stay for a long time. Does that make sense? The example I'm giving? Mostly open. It gets harder as you get older, right? Your memory is not that great, right? But today, subhanAllah, young people, they're more distracted than young old people now. Young people, they're so busy with phone, they can't focus on anything, right? They're so busy with video games, you're like, listen, just focus 1 second, pay attention. They're running all over the place, right? All the sugar and candy they eat, hyperactive, right? They can't calm themselves down. So sometimes you find today young people have a hard time focusing more than old people, right? But, old folks, of course, memory loss, and you have the challenge as well. There's nothing perfect in life, right? Young or old, there's always something, some problem you have to. When you're young, you want to become older. When you're older, you wish to be younger, right? Life is like that, subhanAllah. But, going back to your question, you're in sujood, now you're like, did I pray 3? Did I pray 4? What should I do? You can take a few moments, nothing excessive, to make, extra tasbih, a couple extra tasbih. And if you're like, okay, I'm not sure, just add another rak'ah. That's it. And if you become sure while standing, just go down. Go back down and do your tashahhud. You understand? And while you're standing, you're like, oh no, this is my fourth. I'm sure. I already did my fourth. Go back down, do tashahhud, and do sujood sahwa after.
I thought we would stand up, we cannot go back.
No, this is for a wajib.
Oh, wajib.
Yeah, because now, in sujood, you were thinking, did I do 3 or 4? Right? You took the minimum, right? Which was what? 3. While you're standing, you realize that you did 4 and this is 5. Does that make sense? While you're standing, you realize, oh no, I didn't do 3, I actually did 4. What do you do in that case? You just go back down and you do your tashahhud, you give sujood sahu, you give salam. Make sense? So you're going because you're doing something, because you can't add a 5th rak'ah in salah. Right? That's haram. That would break you, that would nullify your salah, right? You can't add it. The only reason you did it is because you weren't sure. But once you know you're sure, you go back down. You stop doing that because you're not supposed to. You go down, you do your sujood, you give your tashahhud, your sujood sahu, and then you give your salam. Make sense? All right, alhamdulillah. So that covers sujood sahwa. I think we covered it at least in a good description. We covered a lot of the masail. So now everybody knows, okay, this is what I'm going to do if this ever happens, inshallah. If you ever get confused, refer to this lecture. Fiqh lesson number 15, inshallah ta'ala. And then now we're going to get into the next part is also very interesting. Is the nullifiers of salah. What breaks your salah? What nullifies your salah? Okay? So he says, rahimahullah, the author, he says there are 14 nullifiers. تُبْتِلُ الصَّلَاةِ بِأَرْبَعَ عَشْرَةَ خَصْلَةً. He said your salah, 14 things. If you do one of them, your salah is broken. You have to go make your salah again. Right? Number one, hadath. This is what? Impurity. Hadath is when you break your wudu or janaba or something of janaba. So you're standing in salah, you feel, oh, I passed some gas. What do? You get out of salah. The scholars, they say, to avoid the social awkwardness, act like you have a bloody nose. Right? Because if you just walk out of salah, people are going to be like, what's wrong with this guy, right? So they say, what do? Act like you have bloody nose. Grab your nose and walk out like you're bleeding. So that people know, okay, he got out of salah because he has problem with his nose. So our scholars, they give that wisdom. They say if you start in some of the wisdoms of us, like these are like little tips, the scholars they give. So they say if you pass gas in salah, instead of like leaving because of that, act like you have a bloody nose and go. It avoids the awkwardness. They say if you remember something that makes you laugh in salah, I think they said like look down at your toes. Just focus on that. It will help you calm down your laughter. They said this has been tried and it works for a lot of people. So there's these wisdoms, you find it in the commentaries. They talk about some of these ways how to, if you start thinking of something, it can happen. You pray in salah, you think of something funny, right? Something happened, a text message, it's an incident, or you hear something funny around you. Then just kind of like focus on something and like lock your eyes on it. It will help you kind of focus your thoughts. And so they say, I think the reason they say focus on your toes is because like you lower your head. So that lowering of the head and pressing the chin against the shoulder, some way I guess it's supposed to like calm down, your laughter or something of that, sort. So, anyways, but anything that nullifies your wudu breaks your salah. So you pass gas in salah, it breaks your salah. You feel some leakage, through your private parts, it breaks your salah. If you're not sure, you continue praying. You only get out if you're sure. If you're not sure, pray your salah. Don't worry.
How about after that, then you see, oh,
After that, if you found out, okay, I did break my salah, you just do the salah again. Does that make sense? After that, you found out, oh, no, I actually did. But if you're sure, you're like, oh, I'm sure I broke my wudu. Khalas, get out of salah, and then pray your salah separate. Make sense? All right. Any questions? Hajj.
How about, I was for Habrudo, I tested the moment, the lady,
Yeah. Accident, right. So we talked about this one. We said that if it's too difficult for you,
accident,
if it's accident, if it's too hard, there's an opinion that says accidental touch doesn't break your wudu. It's a strong opinion. And so they say if it's accidental, there's no desire, no attraction, nothing like that. It's just accident. The Shafi'i school said you have to make wudu, no matter what. The Shafi'i school, they say you make wudu no matter what. But another opinion that a lot of scholars recommend, even those who are Shafi'i, they say if it's too hard for you, there's an opinion that say accidental touch doesn't break your wudu. So you can follow that one. So if you're busy and somebody touch your hand by accident, you're getting your change from the gas station, the grocery store, whatever, khalas, you're okay. Adopt that second opinion in this situation and it's okay. Is that clear?
different imams.
In this situation, because of difficulty. You're not following different imam because of desire, because this is hardship. Hardship is different than desire, right? If you're just following opinions because of desire, it's going to lead the corruption to the deen. But if you follow different opinion because it's difficult, this is a mercy of the deen. You see, so this is why the scholars, they say, اختلاف العلماء رحمة. The difference of our scholars is mercy. Is mercy. Make sense? So in this situation, is mercy. You have a hard time, khalas, you just khalas, follow a different opinion, make it easy for you and go. Inshallah.
How about you follow like different choose and pick, but you find a strong evidence than the other one?
If you did research and you feel inclined to one opinion more than the other, and you did thorough research, in that case, you could leave the opinion, but this is after doing thorough research and making sure that you actually studied the opinions. Because a lot of times people, they don't understand. They think something is a hukum, but they don't understand the depth of the ruling and the dalil. And I could give an example about this. But maybe we'll get to it right here, inshallah. But the rulings is not just always hadith or ayah. There's a lot of other principles that the scholars, they follow, that they adopt in their judgment. They do analogy, they do qiyas, they do a lot of other deductions. They have principles of qawa'id and usul. All of this is playing into the role. So it takes some time to say like, oh, you know what? I think this opinion is stronger than the other opinion. You have to have done an extensive amount of research and be highly qualified to make that type of deduction, to make that type of conclusion.
We asked imam like you, something like
Yeah.
so this strong or not, you know what I mean?
If the imam, he says, this is the stronger opinion, then that's sufficient. And you trust that imam and you trust his knowledge, khalas, la bas. That's fine too, inshallah. That's okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So if the imam did the research and you're like, yeah, Sheikh, this mas'ala, what should I take? So right here in this issue, like I gave you guys the option of, I'm not giving it to you guys because it's a stronger opinion. I'm giving it to you guys because of difficulty. I don't see myself qualified to say whose opinion is stronger than the other. I'm not going to say, oh, I did research, Imam Shafi'i's opinion is stronger than Imam Abu Hanifa's, and on this issue, Imam Abu Hanifa's opinion is stronger than Shafi'i. I don't see myself qualified to do that. Does that make sense? But I have at least the training to be like, you know what, hey, this is the school, but you can follow this opinion in difficulty. One of the mistakes that people make today is that they read a few books and they think they understand the whole Sharia. And they're like, yeah, this issue, Imam Malik, this opinion, he's more correct. It's like, brother, you only studied a few years. And you're over here saying who's right and who's wrong? You see what I'm saying? You studied 2 years, you can't even speak Arabic correctly. And you're going to tell me Imam Abu Hanifa is more correct than this Imam, and this Imam is more correct than that Imam, and this is stronger opinion, and this opinion is weak, and this opinion is closer to the Sunnah? You can't even speak Arabic right. You barely read any books of Hadith. You barely memorized the Quran. And now you're going to say who's right and who's wrong? Just say, this is the opinion of my teachers, this is what I like to follow. La bas. Have some humility. But to say who's right, who's wrong, that's a level of pride, and that requires a lot of knowledge. In usul al-fiqh, if you want to research this opinion, these issues, and you want to understand, like, when can you make your own opinion, this is called ijtihad. They say that there's a chapter called ijtihad and taqleed. So it's the chapter on deducing law and following a scholar. So they say people are two categories, and there's categories in between. Either you're a mujtahid, you have your knowledge is so advanced, you can look at the Quran and Sunnah, and you can make the interpretation yourself. Or you're a blind follower. You don't have the qualification to interpret the Quran and Sunnah, but you follow the scholars who have the interpretation. All of us, we're muqallideen, we're all blind followers. We're following the interpretation of our shaykh, right? That's what we're all following. Who of us opened Sahih Bukhari and Muslim and Sunan Abi Dawood and Tirmidhi and Nasa'i and learned Arabic grammar and sarf and adab, and who learned tafsir of Quran and memorized all the hadith and the opinions? Who of us did that? I know I didn't do it. I don't know if anybody else here did it. And now if you've reached that level and you're like, you know what, now I can make my own interpretation of Quran and Sunnah, okay, let us know. MashaAllah, we've discovered a scholar, a secret scholar who nobody knows, so we can benefit from you. If you haven't, then you follow the knowledge of qualified scholars. Make sense? That's how it works. So this is the issue called the masail of ijtihad and taqleed. And so one of the fitan today we have, one of the problems we have today is everybody's like, I want to go to Quran Sunnah. Give me Quran Sunnah. Brother, everybody's following Quran and Sunnah. It's just we follow qualified scholars and you think you're the scholar yourself. That's the difference. Quran and Sunnah, we follow Imam Shafi'i. He knows Quran and Sunnah better than you and everybody else that exists. And Imam Malik knows Quran and Sunnah better than you and everybody else that exists. We chose to trust Imam Shafi'i and Imam Malik more than we trust you. You trust yourself, khalas, bismillah, you go to trust yourself. But we trust the scholars that the ummah has followed for many centuries and generations. Make sense? Right? So this is the ignorance that exists today. Everybody, this banner of Quran Sunnah, people, they're misunderstanding what it means to follow Quran Sunnah. Right? And they're using that to undermine our scholars and undervalue their opinions and ijtihadat and make it seem like they're the only ones that know the deen correctly and everybody else doesn't know the deen correctly. So it's a big fitna. May Allah guide us all and guide the ummah and bring us back to the Quran and Sunnah according to the example and understanding of our scholars. Ameen ya Rabb. All right, number 2. He says the number 2 that nullifies your salah is any type of najasa that gets on your body, clothes, or the floor that you're praying on. Unless you take it off immediately. Unless you take it off immediately. Right? Any najasa that gets on you. So a little bit of blood is excused. If there's a little cut, you have a little blood, it's okay. No problem. How about if a kid with najis diaper comes on to you? The kid's diaper is full. What do you do? The majority opinion is that salah is if you have to push the kid away. And if they stay on you for too long, it nullifies your salah. Make sense? If the kid's diaper is full and they're najis, or they're just najis, this kid has najasa on them, and they stay on you, they jump on your back, and they're najis, they say you either push them away, and if they keep jumping on you or keep getting on you, then it nullifies your salah. That's the majority opinion. Make sense? There's an opinion that says it doesn't if the najasa of the child is contained. Like it's in the diaper, it's not spreading, it's contained, they say, and you're not carrying the child, they're just touching you. There's an opinion that says it doesn't, right? So for parents who have young toddlers and infants and mothers and maybe daycare, those who work in daycare service, they can adopt that opinion because of difficulty. Because of what? Difficulty. Because when you're a mother, and especially if you're a mother of young children, you have 3, 4 little babies around the house, it can be sometimes impossible to pray salah without a kid jumping on you, right? So those women in those circumstances, they can adopt that second opinion. Just make sure that the diaper is contained and you don't carry them. One madhab, you know what they say, the Hanbali school, they make things easy for mothers. They say a mother who's raising little babies, she can even combine salah. They say in the Hanbali school, they say a mother who's raising little babies, she can combine salah because why? Sometimes it can be so difficult. You have a newborn, you have a toddler, they're running around, you care for this one's crying, you feed this one, you take this one. It can be a consistent stress. The majority, they say, no, you don't combine salah. But the Hanbali school, they say you even combine salah. Tafaddal. If you're a doctor and you could do procedures and you're searched to work, they say combine your salah too. The Hanbali school, their school is very lax when it comes to some of these issues of combining salah because they consider the difficult circumstances people are in. The majority don't agree with them, but I give that opinion as an option. If you are in a difficult circumstance, you can adopt it as a rahmah, but don't do it out of desire. Right? Don't do it out of desire, but as a difficulty, right? But generally, if najasa gets on you, while you are praying, you push it away. You don't carry it, you just push the najasa away. If it stays on you for a period of time, then your salah breaks, and then you have to start your salah over. Also, another thing is that, subhanAllah, something I found that I see a difference is that I remember as a kid, and I'm just in my 30s, that my parents, when somebody would pray, it would always be quiet. And they would pray somewhere quiet and nobody would disturb them. Today I see with people, somebody is praying, the next person is talking next to them and having tea and talking on the phone. This is an adab I see that people today, they don't have anymore. That are just a generation ago, people, when you make salah, everybody's quiet. They're making salah. Or they give you a private room. So there's no disturbance. But now you're making salah, the person next to you is socializing, loudly. This is a bad adab to have. So this is an adab we really have to teach ourselves. When somebody's making salah, they're in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't disturb them and keep the kids away from them. Right? Sometimes you see somebody making salah, kids are running around, nobody's holding the kids. This is bad adab with salah. We shouldn't have that. We should teach our families and our homes, when somebody's making salah, make it quiet, hold the kids, take them somewhere separate, let the people pray their salah quietly and calmly, so we don't have kids jumping on people while they're praying. But sometimes it can happen. If it does happen, these are the ahkam. Make sense? And it happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Sayyidina, I forgot if it's Hassan or Hussein, he jumped on the Prophet ﷺ's back while he was sujood. So it can happen, and we show compassion, but it doesn't mean we encourage it. And this brings me to the issue of bringing infant and toddlers and preschoolers to the masjid during Ramadan and Jum'ah and stuff like that. If your child disrupts the salah, do not bring them to the masjid. The masjid is supposed to be a place of khushu' and quietness and humility. And so if your child is disrupting the salah, pray home. That is better for you. That is better for you. But you're going to take away the khushu' of the whole jama'ah so you can pray in the masjid? You get more sin than you get ajr. You take away everybody's khushu'. So why? You want to pray in the masjid. So your kid is running around, crying, jumping around, and your other kids are running in the hallways, and it's noisy, and people can't focus, just so you can pray in the masjid? That's very selfish, and that's very inconsiderate. And so it's best to pray at home for those people, to keep their children home, to pray at home. Because why? The masajid, the Prophet ﷺ says, they were built for the remembrance of Allah, for salah, the remembrance of Allah, and recitation of Quran. Anything that interferes with that has to stop. Anything that interferes with that has to stop. So if your kids can come and make salah, khalas. If they can't, what do I advise people to do? I tell them, you and your wife rotate. Let her come Taraweeh one night, you stay home one night. She goes Taraweeh, switch, rotate, work with each other. But you don't have to make the whole community pay the price just for your children to pray in the masjid. There's a big problem. There's a big fitna all around the Muslim world, especially in the West. The masajid are a disaster in Ramadan, especially the women's side. If we opened the door on the women's side in Ramadan, you wouldn't be able to focus. During salah. Amma, if you open the door during lectures, you don't hear a word. And this is very disappointing. It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. The women's side should be no louder than the men's side. If women have young children, keep your young children home. Listen online, listen remotely. Get a babysitter. Right? But don't disrupt the whole jama'ah so you can pray in salah. Unless your kids are very well behaved and very quiet and you can manage that, you are responsible for that. It is your wajib. If your kids are running around and you don't know where they are, get out of salah, go hold your kid. That is the proper way, that is the proper sharia, and according to the sunnah. Right? So this is something that, again, I find is a big fitna. I'm not discouraging people, but all I'm saying is, other people are in the masjid too. So please respect the other people. And if your kid is making noise and causing trouble, either grab your kid and make sure they're praying next to you. Be a responsible parent. If your kid doesn't listen to you for whatever reason, take your kid home and pray home. Taraweeh doesn't have to be in the masjid. You can pray Taraweeh in your house, fine too. You can read from your mushaf and pray your Taraweeh at home too. Right? So this is something some people, they get shocked. They're like, Imam, you're being hard. But I think it's fair because we're not infringing we don't want to infringe on the rights of other people. We don't want to infringe on the rights of other people. Wallahu alam. Any comments, questions?
The imam part, like as a masjid, the imam should tell for people don't bring kids.
Yes, absolutely.
Dad sit there.
Yes.
Some of us, they come like for show up. They have 5, 6 kids.
Yeah.
So then they pray over there, the kids
Run
run around.
around, yes.
The dad is in front.
Yep, and the kids are running around.
The imam sometimes we share.
Oh, yes.
We share. We have to say, take care of your kids, keep home.
I completely agree, inshallah.
Some of lack education,
They don't know. No, inshallah, this year we're going to post signs on the walls telling parents, if your child is not with you, you need to take your child home. If you cannot keep them next to you, you should take your child home. It's one or the other. But if you're praying and your kid is running around, You should not be here. You should pray home. So I will, inshallah, we will post signs. We will announce it to the people. And it's not to discourage them, but it's to respect everybody else. Some people, they want to make tawbah to Allah. They come Ramadan, they want to read Quran, they want to stand in prayer. They come for salah and they have kids running in the back and socializing and kids screaming. You ruined the whole Ramadan. You ruined the whole Ramadan. So fear Allah, don't ruin people's salah, don't ruin people come, they want to call to Ya Allah, Ya Allah. How are you going to call Ya Allah and there's a kid jumping around in the hallway? And another one screaming, and another kid fighting. How are you going to make any focus in salah? You can't. So if you have your kids, and inshallah, as an imam, I made that announcement last Ramadan. And so this Ramadan, I will also make those announcements. And I will also announce it in Jum'ah. And also we will post signs on the walls that parents with young children, keep your children home. Keep your children home. If you can't control your child, then keep them next to you. Stay home with your child, pray your sunnah at home. If you have family members, let somebody babysit for you. Switch with your spouse, rotate, right? But don't disrupt the community for your desire to pray in the masjid. Wallahu a'lam. Let's continue. We don't want to get too distracted with that, inshallah ta'ala. Just that's something I wanted to indicate because I feel this is something that ruins the masajid, especially the women. I feel so bad for them. Women, a lot of them, they come, especially single women. Single women are like, I don't have no kids. I just want to come for khushu'. Or older women, they're like, my kids, I don't bring them. But then we have young mothers that are bringing their children. They ruin the whole musalla for everyone. Other women, they like to socialize during lectures. They come, as soon as salah is over, they just want to talk. It's super loud. That's very disruptive as well. So please, when we're in the masajid, be silent, respect the people around you. You want to talk, go outside. You have your kids, keep them next to you. You can't keep them next to you, keep them home. And if you're a husband, switch with your wife, let her come to the masajid some nights for tarawih, be considerate, right? So we have to be fair and considerate of everybody, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. All right, let's read through these masail so we can conclude tonight's dars, bi'idhnillah. Number 3, he says, Isha, adhan is 8:34, yeah? So it's almost time for adhan. So let's try to conclude, inshallah. Quickly, bismillah. Exposing the awrah if it was not covered immediately. So if your awrah shows in salah, you have to cover it right away. If you don't cover it right away, it nullifies your salah. Make sense? Number 4, intentionally uttering 1 or 2 letters which can be clearly understood. If you say 1 or 2 letters on purpose, you say no or yes, it nullifies your salah. On purpose, not on accident, on purpose. It breaks your salah. Number 5, to eat something in salah. To swallow anything. Even on purpose. If you swallow anything on purpose, it could be a bite of food that's stuck in your teeth, and you like, instead of spitting it out, I'm just going to swallow it, it nullifies your salah. If you do it on purpose. If it happens on accident, it's okay. A morsel of food on accident is okay. A little food that's stuck in your mouth from iftar, you just ate iftar and you're making salat al-maghrib, there's a bite of food, it went down on accident, is okay. But you're going to say, it's just a couple bites, it's small, let me just swallow. That nullifies your salah. You can't do that. You have to spit it out. Number 6, to forgetfully eat a lot. For some reason, somebody's praying salah and they took a bite of food. That nullifies your salah. Number 7, 3 consecutive motions, even if involuntarily. If you do 3 motions in a row, like number 1, you let's say you grab your beard, you scratch your neck, you scratch your arm. 3 consecutive movements, it breaks your salah. You can't do 3 consecutive movements in salah. Make sense? It breaks your salah. 3 consecutive. If it's not consecutive, it's okay. Maybe you scratch your ear and you come back. A little later, you scratch your arm, you come back. A little later, if it's not consecutive, it's okay. Your salah is valid. But if it's consecutive, 3 actions back to back to back, it breaks your salah. This is the scholars that they talk about. If there's a gap in the row in front of you, you take 2 steps, you wait. You don't take 3, because if you take 3, it nullifies your salah. You take 1, or you go 1, 2, wait. And then 1, 2. Does that make sense? So you can do 2, 2, but you can't do 3 consecutively. Make sense? If it's 2 long strides, as long as it's not a jump. Yeah, but if it's a long stride, 1, 2 is okay. 3 consecutively nullifies your salah. Make sense? And generally in salah we shouldn't be moving at all. Not to scratch our ear, not to rub our whatever, not to fix our shirt or button our thobe, nothing. You shouldn't be moving in salah unless it is something that is important and part of the salah. Allah says, وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. Stand in Allah in humility. So we're not supposed to move around in salah in any way or form. We're supposed to be still unless it's something that is really bothering us, is painful. At that point, yes, but just to simply scratch your ear. Sometimes you see brothers checking their watch. Sometimes you see somebody fixing their, rolling down their sleeve in salah. You see stuff and you're like, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Do you know what you're doing? Are you making salah or are you somewhere else? Right? These are bad etiquette. So all of this stuff we have to be careful of. They nullify the salah. Number 8, he says, extra movement that is contrary to the habit of a sane person. There's something, you do something that looks like you're not even in salah anymore. Right? That will take you out of salah. There's a large movement. He commentates on 67, such as jumping. If somebody jumps, they make a big movement. It nullifies the salah. Number 9, an excessive strike of the hand. If you hit somebody in salah, it breaks your salah. You can't hit anybody in salah. It nullifies your salah. If you have a child and you just grab the child, like stop them from falling or something of that sort, or they're praying next to you and you just stop them, if it's 2 movements, it doesn't break your salah. If it's 2 movements, it doesn't break your salah. But if it's more than 2, then it breaks your salah. Number 10, to intentionally add a rukun. Right? You add a rukun to your salah. You add an extra sujood on purpose, extra ruku', that nullifies your salah. And nobody would generally add an extra ruku' or sujood, right? That's generally not done. And if you did it out of forgetfulness and you realized it, don't continue, go back. Right, we said if you end up, you realize, I'm doing 5th rak'ah, go back. You don't say, I already started, let me finish. You don't do that. If you know you're doing extra rukun. This is only for the tashahhud. If you skip the first tashahhud, you continue. Otherwise, if you added something extra, or you don't go back. Make sense? I'm sorry, you don't continue, you do go back. You don't continue, you do go back. Number 11, to precede the imam in 2 physical rukun. 2 physical integrals of salah. If you precede the imam, you go ahead of the imam by 2 rukun. You understand? So if you're ahead of the imam a little bit, it's against the sunnah. You're supposed to not make your takbir till the imam finishes his takbir. Some people, they move with the imam. You're not supposed to move with the imam, you're supposed to move after the imam. When he says Allahu Akbar, you say Allahu Akbar. When he says Sami Allahu liman hamida, some people, as soon as the imam is saying, وَلَمْ يَكُلْ لَهُ, the imam didn't finish the surah, they're already raising their hand. Right? You're not supposed to do that. Let the imam finish, wait. When he makes his Allahu Akbar, then you raise your hand and say Allahu Akbar. Number 12, to delay with 2 integrals without an excuse. You delay 2 arkan. You're behind the imam a lot. If you're behind the imam a little bit, it's okay. If he's in ruku' and you're still standing, you're finishing Fatiha, it's okay. But if you're behind him, he went to ruku', he went up, he went to sujood, and you still don't go make ruku', that will nullify your salah. If the imam is ahead of you by 2 rukun. But if he's just ahead of you in ruku' or a little bit in standing, or the imam is praying really fast and it's hard to compete, he can be ahead of you. It's hard to keep up. He can be ahead of you a little bit. That doesn't harm your salah. Number 13, the intention of terminating the salah by suspending its termination on a foreign action. If you make the intention, like, if I get the phone call, I'm going to get out of salah. You understand? Like, you're waiting for an important phone call. You're like, I'm going to pray, but if I get the phone call, I'm going to get out of salah. That type of intention, it nullifies your salah. Your salah doesn't count. You can't make that type of intention. Make sense? Does it make sense, brother?
Yeah. I saw a couple of people that Uber driver or something, they put their phone on them, they pray.
Yeah.
So when the phone is ringing,
They accept. Right?
if he didn't accept it, but if he watch it,
If you move your eyes in salah, it doesn't affect it. Your salah is valid. You shouldn't do it. And if you're driving or working, just turn off the app. Yeah. Yeah. Unless you're going to completely mute it. You completely mute it. But, and for those who are accepting, it doesn't, if they're just touching a button, it doesn't nullify their salah, but they shouldn't do it. It doesn't nullify their salah. So if they're Uber driver, they have their phone, and if it rings, they just hit the accept button, it doesn't nullify their salah, but they shouldn't do it. When you're in your salah, is your time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There shouldn't be any distraction with money and dunya and work and so on. Your rizq is going to come to you. Right? That 5 minutes of salah, you shouldn't sacrifice that because you want to get an extra job for a few more minutes. Yeah, it's nothing. So that is lack of iman a little bit, So we have to have more iman, inshallah, so that we're not stressing about that, inshallah. Salah time, focus your salah. Focus your salah, inshallah. And number 14, by doubting its termination. You're in salah, you're like, should I get out my salah, should I not get out? You're doubting if you should get out of your salah. That breaks your salah. If you're doubting, you're like, oh, maybe I want to go, maybe not. Thinking like that in salah, you're doubting, you're thinking of getting out of salah, that nullifies your salah. And that is the end of our dars for tonight, inshallah ta'ala. Tomorrow we're going to talk about some of the sunan. Inshallah, tomorrow we have dars to Monday night. And then inshallah, we'll continue with some of the ahkam of following an imam. Some of the ahkam of following an imam. And then we're going to talk about combining salah. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We'll try to get to all of that tomorrow night. And then on Tuesday, we're going to talk about the ahkam of Salatul Jum'ah. Salatul Jum'ah, inshallah ta'ala. And the wajibat of Jum'ah. And then we'll get into the ahkam of janazah. And once we read the ahkam of janazah, we will be done with kitab as-salah. So by Tuesday night, we should be done with kitab as-salah. By Wednesday, we should be starting kitab az-zakah. And then we're going to get to Sawm. And then Ramadan, inshallah.